Maya stared out the car window, arms crossed tightly over her chest, refusing to look at her parents in the front seat. The silence in the car was thick and uncomfortable, broken only by the hum of tires on the highway. Her mother had tried to start a conversation 3 times already, but Maya shut her down each time with nothing more than a grunt or a one-word answer. This was supposed to be her summer. Her friends were going to the beach, hanging out at the mall, staying up late watching movies and eating pizza. Instead, she was being shipped off like some problem that needed to be fixed, sent away because her parents were tired of dealing with her. "It's not a punishment, sweetheart," her mother said softly, breaking the silence once again. "Uncle Thomas needs help on the farm, and we thought it would be good for you to spend some time away from the city." Maya rolled her eyes so hard it almost hurt. "Right, it's not a punishment. That's why you're forcing me to go live with someone I've met maybe twice in my entire life. That's why I had to cancel all my summer plans, because it's such a great opportunity." Her father's hands tightened on the steering wheel, but he kept his voice calm. "Maya, we've tried everything. The nutritionist, the gym membership, the meal plans. Nothing works because you won't even try. We're not doing this to hurt you. We're doing this because we love you and we're worried about your health." There it was. The real reason. Maya felt her face burning with anger and shame. She was 16 years old and weighed over 240 pounds. She knew what people thought when they saw her. She could feel their eyes on her at school, heard the whispers behind her back, saw the way some kids would smirk when she walked by. Her parents called it concern, but Maya knew the truth. They were embarrassed by her. The last year had been especially rough. Maya had stopped going to gym class altogether, collecting detention slips instead of participating. She spent most of her time in her room, scrolling through social media and eating whatever snacks she'd hidden in her desk drawer. Her parents had tried to be supportive at first, signing her up for different programs and buying healthy food that usually ended up rotting in the refrigerator while Maya ordered takeout with her allowance. But things had come to a head 3 weeks ago when Maya's school counselor called her parents in for a meeting. Maya hadn't been there, but she'd heard them talking about it afterward. Words like depression and health crisis and intervention floated through the walls of her bedroom. That's when they'd made the decision. Maya was going to spend the entire summer with Uncle Thomas on his farm in Montana, 3 states away from everything she knew. "You'll have your phone," her mother added, trying to sound encouraging, "and you can call us anytime you want. Uncle Thomas said the internet connection isn't great, but you'll be able to check in with your friends." Maya didn't respond. What was the point? Her mind drifted to the conversations she'd had with her best friend Riley before leaving. Riley had been sympathetic but also clearly relieved that she wasn't the one being sent away. They'd promised to text every day, but Maya wondered how long that would actually last. Out of sight, out of mind, right? As they drove further from the city, the landscape began to change. Tall buildings gave way to strip malls, then to suburbs, then to stretches of highway bordered by fields and farms. Maya had never been this far into the countryside before. It felt like they were driving to the edge of the world, leaving civilization behind. The GPS on her father's phone showed they still had another hour to go. Maya pulled out her own phone and started scrolling through Instagram. Pictures of her classmates having fun, going to parties, living the summer she was supposed to have. Each photo felt like a knife twisting in her chest. She was missing everything, and for what? So she could shovel horse manure and wake up at dawn to feed chickens? Her parents had shown her exactly 3 photos of Uncle Thomas's farm, and all of them looked like something out of a history textbook. Old barn, dirt roads, nothing but fields for miles. When they finally turned onto a gravel road marked by a weathered wooden sign that said Peterson Farm, Maya felt her stomach drop. This was really happening. The car bumped along the uneven road, kicking up dust that coated the windows. After what felt like forever, they pulled up to a small farmhouse that looked like it had been standing there for at least 100 years. The paint was faded, the porch sagged slightly, and there was a rusted tractor parked near a massive red barn. Uncle Thomas was waiting on the porch, wearing work boots and jeans covered in dirt. He was tall and lean, with sun-weathered skin and gray hair peeking out from under a baseball cap. Maya remembered him from a family gathering years ago, but he'd been quiet then, mostly keeping to himself while the rest of the family talked. Her father parked the car and everyone got out. Maya moved slowly, dragging her feet, making it clear with every step that she didn't want to be here. "Thomas," her father said, shaking Uncle Thomas's hand. "Thanks for doing this. We really appreciate it." Uncle Thomas nodded, his face unreadable. "Daniel, good to see you." He turned to Maya's mother, "Lisa." Then his eyes landed on Maya, and she braced herself for the look, the one that said he was disappointed or concerned or pitying. But Uncle Thomas just nodded once. "Maya, glad you're here. No lecture." No comment about her weight or her health or what a great opportunity this was. Just a simple greeting. Maya didn't know what to do with that, so she just stood there, arms still crossed. Her parents helped carry her bags inside. The farmhouse was exactly what Maya expected. Old furniture, creaky wooden floors, and a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a museum. There was no dishwasher, no microwave, just an ancient stove and a sink with a window that looked out over the fields. Uncle Thomas showed them to Maya's room upstairs. It was small but clean, with a single bed covered in a handmade quilt, a wooden dresser, and a window that wouldn't close all the way. "Bathroom's down the hall," Uncle Thomas said. "We share it. Breakfast is at 5:30. You'll help with morning chores, then we break for lunch around noon. Evening chores start at 5. Maya's eyes went wide. 5:30 in the morning? Uncle Thomas looked at her with those calm, steady eyes. "Sun doesn't wait for anyone. Animals need to eat." Her mother jumped in quickly. "I'm sure Maya will adjust just fine. Won't you, honey?" Maya wanted to scream. She wanted to refuse, to demand they take her back home right now. But looking at her parents' faces, she could see they'd already made up their minds. There was no getting out of this. She was stuck here for the entire summer. 3 months of torture on this dusty farm in the middle of nowhere. Her parents didn't stay long. They hugged her goodbye, promised to call, and told her they loved her. Maya barely hugged them back as she watched their car disappear down the long gravel road, leaving nothing but a cloud of dust behind. She felt more alone than she'd ever felt in her life. Uncle Thomas stood next to her on the porch for a moment, then spoke quietly. "Your room's yours. Make yourself comfortable. Dinner's at 6. I'll be in the barn if you need anything." Then he walked away, leaving Maya standing there with the summer stretching out endlessly before her. She went inside, climbed the creaky stairs to her room, and threw herself onto the bed. The quilt smelled like lavender and sunshine. Through the half-open window, she could hear birds chirping and the distant sound of something that might have been a cow. Maya pulled out her phone. 1 bar of signal. She tried to load Instagram, but the app just spun and spun without loading anything. Perfect, just perfect. She was trapped on a farm with no internet, no friends, and an uncle who barely talked. This was going to be the worst summer of her entire life. She rolled over and stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the old plaster. Tomorrow morning at 5:30, her new life would begin. Maya had no idea that everything she thought she knew about herself was about to change. The alarm on Maya's phone went off at 5 in the morning, and she seriously considered throwing it across the room. She'd barely slept. The bed was too firm. The sounds of the countryside were too loud. And her mind wouldn't stop racing with angry thoughts about her parents and this horrible situation. But she dragged herself out of bed anyway, because what choice did she have? She pulled on jeans and a t-shirt, splashed cold water on her face in the tiny bathroom, and made her way downstairs. Her legs ached from just walking down the stairs. That's how out of shape she was. Uncle Thomas was already in the kitchen, pouring coffee into 2 metal thermoses. He handed one to Maya without a word. She'd never been a coffee drinker, but she took it anyway, grateful for something warm to hold in the cool morning air. "Chickens first," Uncle Thomas said, heading toward the door. "Then the horses. I'll show you today. Tomorrow you'll do it yourself." Maya followed him outside, where the world was still mostly dark. The sky was just starting to turn purple at the edges, and the air smelled like grass and dirt and something else she couldn't quite identify. They walked across the yard to a large chicken coop, and Uncle Thomas showed her how to fill the feeders and water containers, how to check for eggs, and how to count the chickens to make sure none had escaped or been taken by predators during the night. The chickens were loud and chaotic, rushing toward the food and pecking at each other. Maya had never been this close to farm animals before, and honestly, they kind of freaked her out. But she did what Uncle Thomas showed her, moving slowly and carefully. After the chickens came the horses. There were 3 of them in a large pasture behind the barn, and they came trotting over when they saw Uncle Thomas approaching with hay. Maya hung back, nervous about getting too close to animals that big. But Uncle Thomas just handed her a section of hay and nodded toward the fence. "They won't hurt you. Just toss it over." Maya did as she was told, and the horses immediately started eating, completely uninterested in her. It was almost insulting how little they cared about her presence. The morning chores took 2 hours. By the time they were done, Maya was sweating despite the cool air, and her arms felt like rubber. They went back to the house where Uncle Thomas made scrambled eggs and toast. Maya ate mechanically, too tired to even taste the food properly. "Rest until lunch," Uncle Thomas said after they'd cleaned up. "You'll need your energy for this afternoon." Maya didn't need to be told twice. She went back to her room and collapsed on the bed, falling asleep almost instantly. The first 2 days followed the same pattern. Wake up before dawn, do chores, eat, rest, do more chores, eat, sleep. Uncle Thomas didn't talk much, which Maya appreciated. She wasn't in the mood for lectures or motivational speeches. The work was exhausting, but there was something almost mindless about it that kept her from thinking too much about how miserable she was. On the third morning, something different happened. Maya woke up at 5 like usual, but when she got downstairs, Uncle Thomas wasn't in the kitchen. His coffee thermos was gone, which meant he was already outside. Maya made her way to the chicken coop, figuring she'd start there like always. But as she was collecting eggs, she noticed Uncle Thomas walking quickly toward the barn, carrying something in his arms. She couldn't see what it was from this distance, but there was something urgent about the way he moved. Maya finished with the chickens faster than usual, her curiosity getting the better of her. Uncle Thomas had always been so calm and methodical. What would make him hurry like that? She walked toward the barn, moving quietly without really knowing why. The big barn doors were closed, which was unusual. Normally they stood open during the day. Maya circled around to the side, where she knew there were gaps between the old wooden boards. She found a spot where she could see inside without being noticed. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. The barn was much bigger than she'd realized, and it was full of animals. Not farm animals, but animals that clearly didn't belong there. In one corner, there was a horse so thin that Maya could see every rib, every bone in its body. Uncle Thomas was kneeling next to it, speaking in a low, gentle voice while carefully wrapping its leg in clean bandages. The horse's eyes were wide with fear, but it stood still, trembling. But that wasn't all. As Maya's eyes adjusted to the dim light inside the barn, she saw more. There were several dogs in large pens, and they all looked wrong somehow. Some were missing patches of fur, others had visible scars. One dog, a medium-sized brown mutt, was pressed into the corner of its pen, shaking uncontrollably even though nothing was threatening it. There were goats too, 3 of them in a separate area. One was limping badly and another had what looked like old burn scars on its side. In the back of the barn, Maya spotted something she never expected to see on a farm in Montana: an alpaca. A small, scraggly alpaca that was missing most of the fur on one side of its body. Maya watched as Uncle Thomas finished bandaging the horse's leg and then moved to the dog pens. He sat down on the ground outside the pen with the shaking brown dog and just stayed there, not trying to touch the dog, not forcing anything. He pulled out a book from his back pocket and started reading aloud in that same quiet voice. "It's okay, buddy," he said softly between sentences. "Nobody's going to hurt you here. Take your time. We've got all the time in the world." The dog didn't stop shaking, but after a few minutes it lifted its head slightly, looking at Uncle Thomas with confused, frightened eyes. Maya's mind was racing. What was all this? Where did these animals come from? Why were they hidden in the barn? She'd been here for 3 days and had no idea any of this existed. Uncle Thomas had never mentioned it, never brought her into this part of the barn. She watched for almost an hour as Uncle Thomas moved through the barn, caring for each animal with infinite patience. He changed bandages, filled water bowls, spoke encouraging words to creatures that had clearly been through terrible things. When he got to the alpaca, he spent 15 minutes just sitting nearby, letting the animal get used to his presence before he even attempted to check its injuries. Maya's legs were starting to cramp from crouching, but she couldn't look away. This wasn't just a farm. This was something else entirely. Uncle Thomas was running some kind of secret rescue operation, saving animals that nobody else wanted or cared about. Finally, Uncle Thomas stood up, stretched his back, and started walking toward the barn door. Maya panicked and quickly moved away, speed-walking back toward the chicken coop like she'd been there the whole time. Her heart was pounding and her mind was spinning with questions. At breakfast, Uncle Thomas didn't mention anything unusual. He made oatmeal and sat across from Maya at the small kitchen table, eating in his usual quiet way. Maya wanted to ask him about what she'd seen, but something held her back. If he wanted her to know about the animals in the barn, he would have told her, right? Maybe it was illegal. Maybe he could get in trouble if anyone found out. She spent the rest of the day distracted, barely paying attention to the afternoon chores. Her mind kept going back to that thin horse, to the terrified dog, to the burned goat. What had happened to them? How did Uncle Thomas find them? And why was he doing this all alone? That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything she'd seen. In the quiet darkness, she could hear the sounds of the farm. The crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, and something else. A soft whimpering sound coming from the direction of the barn. She got out of bed and went to the window. From here, she could just barely see the barn in the moonlight. There was a light on inside, a soft yellow glow seeping through the cracks in the walls. Uncle Thomas was still out there, still taking care of those broken, frightened animals in the middle of the night. Maya thought about her own life back home, how she'd felt rejected and judged, how she'd hidden in her room because facing the world felt too hard. She thought about how her parents had looked at her with worry and disappointment, like she was a problem that needed fixing. Those animals in the barn probably felt the same way. Broken, unwanted, too damaged to be worth anyone's time or effort. But Uncle Thomas didn't see them that way. He saw something worth saving. Maya climbed back into bed, but her mind was wide awake. Everything had changed. This wasn't just a punishment anymore. She'd stumbled onto something real, something that mattered. Uncle Thomas was out there every single day, saving creatures that everyone else had given up on. He was spending his own money, his own time, his own energy on animals that might never fully recover, and he was doing it all alone. The next morning, Maya woke up before her alarm. She got dressed quickly and headed downstairs, determined. When Uncle Thomas came in from his early check on the animals, she was waiting for him in the kitchen with coffee already made. He raised an eyebrow, surprised. "You're up early." Maya took a deep breath. "I want to help. With the animals in the barn. The ones you're rescuing. I saw them yesterday and I want to help." Uncle Thomas studied her face for a long moment. Maya couldn't read his expression. Was he angry that she'd been snooping? Was he going to deny everything? Finally, he nodded slowly. "All right. Finish your coffee. I'll show you what needs to be done." As they walked toward the barn together in the early morning light, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. For the first time since arriving at the farm, she wasn't thinking about how much she hated being here. She was thinking about that scared brown dog and wondering if today might be the day it stopped shaking. The barn door creaked as Uncle Thomas pushed it open, and Maya stepped inside with her heart racing. In the daylight streaming through the gaps in the walls, she could see the space more clearly than she had while peeking through the boards. It was organized chaos. Every corner served a purpose. Every animal had its own area with clean bedding and fresh water. Uncle Thomas walked her through the barn methodically, introducing her to each resident like they were old friends. "This is Captain," he said, stopping at the pen with the thin horse. "Found him at an auction 3 months ago. Owner was selling him for meat because he stopped winning races. He's gained about 60 pounds since he got here, but he's still got a ways to go." Maya looked at Captain's protruding ribs and couldn't imagine what he must have looked like 3 months ago. The horse watched them with dark, cautious eyes, his ears flicking back and forth nervously. "Can I touch him?" Maya asked quietly. "Let him come to you," Uncle Thomas said. "Never force it. These animals have been forced to do enough things they didn't want to do." They moved to the dog pens next. Uncle Thomas explained that the brown dog's name was Buddy, and he'd been found chained to a tree in someone's backyard with no shelter, no food, and no water. The neighbors finally called animal control after hearing him crying for 3 days straight. "How long has he been here?" Maya asked, watching Buddy tremble in his corner. 5 weeks. He's better than he was. First week, he wouldn't even look at me. Now he makes eye contact sometimes. It's progress." The other dogs had similar stories. A black lab mix named Pepper had been hit by a car and left on the side of the road. A small terrier called Tiny had been used for breeding until she couldn't have puppies anymore, then dumped at a shelter with a note saying she was aggressive. Uncle Thomas had taken one look at her terrified face and known the truth. She wasn't aggressive. She was scared. The goats were named Larry, Curly, and Mo, which made Maya smile despite the sadness of their stories. They'd been kept in a tiny pen with no room to move, standing in their own waste until their hooves were infected and their coats were matted beyond recognition. The alpaca, whose name was Fernando, had been bought as a pet by someone who had no idea how to care for him and had kept him locked in a garage. "Why do you do this?" Maya asked as they finished the tour. "I mean, where do you even find all these animals?" Uncle Thomas leaned against a wooden post and pulled off his work gloves. "I've got connections with animal control in 3 counties. Some vets call me when they see bad cases. Sometimes people just show up with animals they found. Word gets around when you're willing to take in the ones nobody else wants. But it must cost so much money. The vet bills alone must be crazy." "It does," Uncle Thomas admitted. "I work construction jobs in the winter when there's less farm work. Save up what I can. Some vets give me discounts because they know what I'm doing. It's not about the money, though. It's about giving these animals a chance." Maya understood that on a level she couldn't quite put into words. She spent the rest of the morning learning the routine. Every animal had specific needs. Captain needed special feed to help him gain weight safely. Buddy needed his water bowl placed in a specific spot where he felt secure enough to drink. The goats needed their hooves checked daily and treated with medicine. Fernando needed to be brushed gently every day to help his coat grow back properly. The work was hard and sometimes gross. Maya had to clean out pens, haul heavy bags of feed, and deal with animals who didn't always cooperate. But something about it felt different from the pointless busy work she'd expected. This mattered. Every task she completed made a real difference to a living creature who depended on her. By the end of the first week working with the rescue animals, Maya noticed something strange. She wasn't checking her phone as much. Back home, she'd been glued to social media, constantly scrolling, comparing her life to everyone else's, feeling worse and worse about herself with every perfect photo she saw. Here on the farm, hours would pass without her even thinking about her phone. Riley had texted a few times, sending photos from the beach and complaining about her summer job at the movie theater. Maya responded, but the conversations felt hollow. How could she explain what she was experiencing? Riley wouldn't understand why Maya was excited about the fact that Buddy had eaten from a bowl placed only 3 feet away from where Uncle Thomas sat. That was huge progress. That meant Buddy was starting to trust humans again. The second week brought new challenges. Uncle Thomas taught Maya how to give the animals their medications, how to spot signs of infection or distress, and how to move around the more nervous animals without triggering their fear. Maya learned that patience wasn't just about waiting. It was about reading body language, about knowing when to push forward and when to back off. Captain taught her that lesson best. One morning, Maya approached his pen with his feed bucket, and he actually took a few steps toward her instead of backing away. Her instinct was to rush forward, to close the distance while she had the chance, but she remembered Uncle Thomas's words and stood still, letting Captain make the choice. The horse stopped halfway, considering, then took another step, then another. Finally, he stretched his neck out and ate directly from the bucket she was holding. Maya's arms were shaking by the time he finished, not from the weight of the bucket but from the emotion of the moment. This horse, who had been starved and discarded and sold for meat, trusted her enough to eat from her hand. "You're doing good work," Uncle Thomas said from behind her, making her jump. She hadn't heard him approach. "He likes you." Maya felt something warm bloom in her chest. Pride, maybe. Or purpose. She wasn't sure, but it felt good. The physical work was changing her body in ways she tried not to think about too much. Her jeans were definitely looser, and she could walk up and down the stairs without getting winded. She could lift feed bags that would have been impossible for her a few weeks ago. But more than that, she felt stronger. Not just physically, but in some deeper way she couldn't quite name. One afternoon, Uncle Thomas found Maya sitting in Buddy's pen. She'd managed to get inside without the dog completely freaking out, and she was sitting against the far wall, reading aloud from a book she'd found in the farmhouse. It was some old Western novel that she normally would never touch, but Buddy seemed to like the sound of her voice. "I tried what you do," Maya explained. "Just sitting and reading." He stopped shaking after about 20 minutes. Uncle Thomas nodded approvingly. "That's real progress. He's starting to understand that people can be safe." "Do you think he'll ever be normal?" Maya asked. "Like, will he ever just be a regular happy dog?" Uncle Thomas considered the question carefully. Normal is different for everyone. Buddy's been through trauma. That doesn't just disappear. But can he learn to trust again? Can he have good days? Can he find joy in small things? Absolutely. That's what recovery looks like. Not erasing the past, but building a better present. Maya thought about that a lot over the following days. She started keeping a journal, something she'd never done before. She wrote about the animals, about their progress, about the small victories that happened every day. Tiny let her pet her head for the first time. Mo's hoof infection was finally clearing up. Fernando came when called instead of running away. But she also wrote about herself, about how strange it was to feel useful, to feel like she was good at something. Back home she'd felt like a failure at everything. School was hard, friends were complicated, and her own body felt like an enemy she was constantly fighting against. Here things were simpler. The animals didn't care what she looked like. They only cared about whether she showed up, whether she was gentle, whether she kept her promises. Uncle Thomas never mentioned her weight. Not once. He never commented on the fact that she could now carry 2 feed buckets at once when she'd struggled with one at the beginning. He never made a big deal about the fact that she was keeping up with the work, that she was volunteering to take on extra tasks, that she was waking up before her alarm most mornings now. One evening, they were sitting on the porch after dinner, watching the sun set over the fields. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink that Maya had never seen in the city. Uncle Thomas was drinking coffee, and Maya had discovered she actually liked the taste now, especially the way Uncle Thomas made it, strong but not bitter. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Sure. Why didn't you tell me about the rescue animals right away? Why did you wait until I found them?" Uncle Thomas was quiet for a moment, rocking slowly in his chair. "I needed to see if you were really interested or just bored. These animals need people who care, not people who are just killing time. Once I saw you following me to the barn, once I saw the look on your face when you asked to help, I knew you got it." "Got what?" "That every life matters, that healing takes time, that the broken things are worth saving." Maya felt tears prick her eyes and she blinked them away quickly. "The broken things are worth saving," she repeated softly. "Always," Uncle Thomas said firmly. "Always." That night, Maya video called her parents for the first time in 2 weeks. She'd been texting them every few days to let them know she was alive, but she'd avoided actual conversations. Now, though, she wanted to tell them about the animals, about what she was learning, about how different everything felt. Her mother answered, and her father crowded into the frame. They both looked surprised to see her smiling. "Hey, sweetie. How are you?" "We've been so worried." "You look different." Maya did look different. Her face was tan from spending so much time outside, and her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail because it was more practical for farm work. But more than that, something about her expression had changed. She looked alive in a way she hadn't in a long time. "I'm good, Mom. Actually, I'm really good. Uncle Thomas is teaching me so much." "Did you know he rescues animals?" She spent the next 30 minutes telling them everything, the words tumbling out faster than she could organize them. Her parents listened, asking questions, sounding amazed and a little confused by the transformation in their daughter. When she finally hung up, Maya realized something that would have seemed impossible just a few weeks ago. She wasn't counting down the days until she could leave anymore. She was counting the days she had left, wondering if it would be enough time to see Buddy fully recover, to watch Captain gain all his weight back, to help Fernando's coat grow in completely. Summer was half over, and Maya was finally awake. Maya was in the barn grooming Fernando when Uncle Thomas's phone rang. It was a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks into her stay, and the routine had become second nature. She could tell by the change in his voice that something was wrong. "How many?" Uncle Thomas asked, his jaw tightening. "And they're just leaving them there?" "No food or water." A pause. "I'll be there as soon as I can." He hung up and stood there for a moment, his hand running through his hair in a gesture Maya had learned meant he was stressed. She put down the brush and walked over. "What's wrong?" "There's a foreclosed property about 40 minutes from here. Bank took it over last month. The people who lived there just walked away and left their chickens. 20 of them, according to the neighbor who called it in. They've been without food for at least 3 days, maybe longer. I need to go get them now." Maya's stomach dropped. 20 chickens in distress, and Uncle Thomas would have to handle it alone like he always did. Except he wasn't alone this time. She was here. I'll come with you, she said immediately. Uncle Thomas shook his head. I appreciate it, but I've also got to deliver hay to another rescue operation 3 hours north. I promised them 2 weeks ago. They're completely out, and they've got horses that need it. I can't do both. So let me do the chickens, Maya said, the words coming out before she'd fully thought them through. You deliver the hay. I'll get the chickens. Uncle Thomas looked at her like she'd suggested flying to the moon. Maya, this isn't just picking up some birds. Abandoned animals can be aggressive. The property might be dangerous. You'd need help and you'd need to know what you're doing. So tell me what to do. You've been teaching me for 6 weeks. I know how to handle scared animals. I know how to check for injuries and illness. I can do this. She could see him weighing the options in his mind. The hay had to be delivered today. The chickens needed to be rescued today. He couldn't be in 2 places at once. There's a kid who volunteers sometimes, lives on the neighboring farm. Uncle Thomas said slowly. Name's Tyler. He's helped me with rescues before. If I call him and he can go with you, and if you promise to be careful and call me if anything goes wrong, then maybe, call him, Maya said with more confidence than she felt. 20 minutes later, Maya was sitting in Uncle Thomas's old pickup truck with Tyler, a 17-year-old with red hair and an easy smile, driving toward the foreclosed property. Uncle Thomas had given her detailed instructions, made her repeat them back twice, and loaded the truck bed with everything they might need: carriers, water, feed, leather gloves, and a first aid kit. So you're the niece staying for the summer, Tyler said as they drove. Thomas mentioned you've been helping with the rescues. That's pretty cool. It's the best thing I've ever done, Maya said, surprising herself with how true that was. The foreclosed property was worse than Maya had imagined. The house looked like it had been nice once, but now the lawn was overgrown. Windows were broken and trash was scattered across the yard. They could hear the chickens before they even got out of the truck, a desperate clucking that made Maya's heart race. Okay, Tyler said, grabbing the supplies from the truck bed. Let's assess the situation first before we do anything. Thomas always says don't rush in. They found the chickens in a dilapidated coop behind the house. The smell hit Maya first, and she had to breathe through her mouth to keep from gagging. The chickens were in terrible shape, thin and dirty, with several lying motionless on the ground. The water containers were bone dry and there wasn't a scrap of food anywhere. We need to give them water first, Maya said, remembering Uncle Thomas's lessons. Dehydration is the most immediate danger. They filled the water containers and the chickens that could still move rushed toward them desperately. Maya counted as best she could. 17. That meant 3 were already dead or too weak to respond. I'm going to check the ones that aren't moving, Tyler said. You start catching the healthy ones and getting them in carriers. Catching chickens turned out to be much harder than Maya expected. They were scared and scattered in every direction. She fell twice in the mud, got pecked more times than she could count, and was pretty sure she pulled a muscle in her shoulder. But she kept going, talking to the chickens in the same gentle voice she used with Buddy. Moving slowly and carefully, Tyler confirmed that 2 chickens had already died, but one that had looked unconscious was just extremely weak. With some water and gentle handling, it showed signs of revival. They were loading the last few chickens into carriers when a truck pulled up to the property. A man in his 50s got out, his face red with anger. What the hell do you think you're doing? He shouted, storming toward them. This is private property. You're trespassing. Maya's heart started pounding, but Tyler stepped forward calmly. Are you the property owner? I'm the property manager for the bank. This is foreclosed property and you have no right to be here. These animals were abandoned and left to die, Maya said, finding her voice. That's animal cruelty, which is illegal. We're rescuing them. The man's face got even redder. Those chickens belong to the bank now as part of the property assets. You're stealing. Tyler pulled out his phone. I'm happy to call the sheriff's department and animal control right now. I'm sure they'd be very interested in hearing about how the bank is allowing animals to starve to death on property they're responsible for. That would make a great news story, don't you think? Maya grabbed her own phone and started taking pictures of the dead chickens, the empty water containers, the filthy conditions. Her hands were shaking, but she made sure to document everything clearly. I'm documenting all of this, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The neglect, the deaths, everything. If you want to press charges for theft, go ahead. But I promise you the charges against whoever's responsible for this situation will be a lot worse. The man looked between them, his anger shifting to uncertainty. Tyler continued, "Or you could just let us take these birds that the bank doesn't actually want anyway, and we all walk away. Your choice." There was a long, tense moment where Maya was sure the police were going to be called and she'd end up in serious trouble. Then the man swore under his breath, waved his hand dismissively, and got back in his truck. "Take the damn chickens. I don't get paid enough for this." He drove away in a cloud of dust, and Maya realized she'd been holding her breath. She let it out in a shaky laugh that was part relief, part disbelief. "Holy crap," she said. "Did that just happen?" Tyler grinned. "Welcome to animal rescue. It's not always pretty, and it's not always legal gray area. But we got them. That's what matters." They finished loading the chickens and started the drive back to the farm. Maya called Uncle Thomas to let him know they were safe and had successfully rescued 17 living chickens. She could hear the pride in his voice when he told her she'd done good work. The chickens were in bad shape, but they were alive. Back at the farm, Maya and Tyler spent the next 3 hours setting up a quarantine area in one of the empty stalls, getting each chicken water and food, checking for injuries and illness. 5 of them needed immediate veterinary attention, which Maya documented carefully so Uncle Thomas could take them to the vet first thing in the morning. By the time Tyler left and Uncle Thomas returned from his hay delivery, Maya was exhausted in a way she'd never experienced before. Every muscle ached. She had scratches on her arms from catching chickens, and she was pretty sure she smelled terrible. But she felt amazing. Uncle Thomas walked through the quarantine area, checking each chicken carefully. When he was done, he turned to Maya with something in his eyes she'd never seen before. "Respect. You did real good today," he said quietly. "Standing up to that property manager, documenting everything, keeping your cool. That took guts." "I was terrified," Maya admitted. "I thought we were going to get arrested." "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared." He paused, then added, "These chickens are alive because of you. Don't forget that." That night, Maya sat on her bed with her journal, trying to find the words for what she was feeling. 6 weeks ago, she'd been a girl who hid in her room, who felt useless and unwanted, who couldn't imagine ever being brave or strong or capable. Today, she'd rescued 17 animals from death. She'd stood up to an angry adult. She'd done something that mattered. She thought about the person she'd been when she arrived at this farm, angry and resentful, and convinced this summer would be torture. That girl felt like a stranger now. Maya looked at her reflection in the small mirror above her dresser. Her face was tanned and freckled from the sun. Her arms had visible muscles she'd never had before. But the biggest change wasn't physical. It was in her eyes. They looked different. Confident. Alive. She picked up her phone and opened the message thread with Riley. Her friend had sent a bunch of messages over the past few days that Maya hadn't responded to, mostly complaints about work and gossip about people from school. Instead of responding to any of that, Maya typed, "I did something incredible today. I'll tell you about it when I get home. Miss you." Then she set down her phone and went back to her journal, writing down every detail of the rescue while it was still fresh in her mind, because this was a story worth remembering. This was the day Maya learned that she was capable of more than she'd ever imagined. This was the day everything changed. Maya woke up on her last day at the farm with a feeling she couldn't quite name. It wasn't sadness exactly, though there was definitely some of that. It was more like the feeling you get when you finish reading an incredible book, and you're not ready to leave that world behind. 3 months had passed in what felt like both forever and no time at all. Her parents were driving up today to take her home, back to the city, back to school, back to her old life. Except Maya wasn't sure that life existed anymore. She wasn't sure she could fit back into it even if she wanted to. She got up and did the morning routine one last time. The chickens she'd rescued were thriving now, integrated with Uncle Thomas's regular flock. All 17 had survived, which Uncle Thomas said was remarkable given the shape they'd been in. Captain had gained so much weight that his ribs no longer showed, and he'd started trotting around his pasture with something that almost looked like joy. Buddy still had nervous moments, but he could now be petted and had even started playing with toys. That was huge. The morning chores took on a different meaning knowing it was the last time. Maya found herself moving slower, wanting to memorize every detail. The way the early light came through the barn windows, the sound of Fernando humming contentedly as she brushed his coat, which had grown back thick and healthy. The feeling of Tiny curling up against her leg while she sat in the dog pen. Uncle Thomas found her there after breakfast, sitting with all the dogs, tears running down her face that she wasn't bothering to hide. "You okay?" he asked, lowering himself to sit on the ground beside her. "I don't want to leave them," Maya said, her voice breaking. "What if they think I abandoned them like everyone else did?" "Animals live in the present," Uncle Thomas said gently. "They don't worry about tomorrow. Right now, in this moment, you're here and they're happy. That's all that matters to them. But it matters to me. I can't stop thinking about not being here for morning feedings, not seeing their progress, not being part of this anymore." Uncle Thomas was quiet for a moment, scratching Pepper behind the ears. "You know this farm will still be here when you go back to school. These animals will still need help. And summer vacation comes around every year." Maya looked at him. "You mean I could come back?" "I mean I'd be disappointed if you didn't. You've got a gift for this work, Maya. Real compassion, real dedication. That's rare. I could use a partner who actually knows what she's doing." The word partner made something warm spread through Maya's chest. Not an assistant, not a helper, a partner. "I want to do more than just come back in the summer," Maya said, the idea forming as she spoke. "I want to help even when I'm not here. What if we started a social media page for the sanctuary? We could share the animals' stories, ask for donations, maybe even find adopters for the ones who are ready. I could run it from home." Uncle Thomas raised his eyebrows. "I don't know much about that social media stuff." "I do. Or at least I know enough. Let me try, please." "All right," Uncle Thomas agreed. "But on one condition. You focus on school too. Education matters. If you really want to make a difference for animals long term, you need knowledge. Take science classes. Learn about animal behavior and veterinary medicine. Don't let this become an excuse to ignore the rest of your life." Maya nodded, and suddenly everything clicked into place in her mind. She knew exactly what she wanted to do with her future. She wanted to be a veterinarian who specialized in rescue animals. She wanted to help creatures that everyone else had given up on. She wanted to be like Uncle Thomas, but with the medical knowledge to do even more. "I'm going to be a vet," she said out loud for the first time. "That's what I want to do." "Is that crazy?" "Not even a little bit," Uncle Thomas said. "I think you'd be excellent at it." Her parents arrived at noon, and Maya watched from the porch as their car came up the long gravel driveway. She felt nervous in a way she hadn't expected. What would they think? What would they say? When they got out of the car, her mother gasped audibly. Her father just stood there with his mouth slightly open. Maya realized she must look completely different from the girl they'd dropped off 3 months ago. She'd lost weight, though she honestly wasn't sure how much because Uncle Thomas didn't own a scale, and she'd stopped caring about numbers. Her face was tanned and freckled. Her hair was longer and sun-bleached at the ends, and her arms and legs showed muscle definition she'd never had before. But more than any physical change, she stood differently. Taller, more confident, like someone who knew exactly who she was. "Maya?" her mother said uncertainly. "Sweetie, is that you?" Maya walked down the porch steps and hugged them both. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I missed you." "You look so different," her father said, holding her at arm's length to get a better look. "You look healthy. You look happy?" "I am happy," Maya said simply. "Come on, I want to show you everything." She took them on a tour of the farm, introducing them to all the animals, telling them each story with the passion of someone sharing something they truly love. Her parents followed, asking questions, looking amazed at the scope of what Uncle Thomas had built. When they got to Buddy's pen, Maya went inside and sat down. Buddy immediately came over and rested his head in her lap, something that had taken 2 months of patient work to achieve. "This is Buddy," Maya said, gently stroking the dog's ears. "When he first got here, he was so traumatized he couldn't even make eye contact with humans. Now look at him. He's going to make someone an amazing pet someday." Her mother had tears in her eyes. "You did this? You helped him heal?" "Uncle Thomas and I did it together. But yeah, I was part of it." They went back to the house where Uncle Thomas had made lunch. As they ate sandwiches at the old kitchen table, Maya told her parents everything. About the rescue work, about the chicken rescue and standing up to the property manager, about her plans for the social media campaign, and finally, about her decision to become a veterinarian. "I know my grades haven't been great," she said, "but I'm going to change that. I need to take harder science classes, get into a good college, and eventually get into vet school. I can do it." I know I can because I've learned that I'm capable of way more than I thought. Her parents exchanged a look that Maya couldn't quite read. Then her father spoke. Maya, we need to be honest with you about something. When we sent you here, we were hoping you'd lose weight. That was our main goal. We thought if you worked on a farm all summer, if you couldn't access junk food, if you were physically active, you'd come home thinner and we could finally stop worrying about your health. Maya felt her stomach drop. There it was. The truth she'd suspected all along, but her father wasn't finished. We were wrong. Completely wrong. We were so focused on your weight that we couldn't see what you actually needed. You didn't need a diet or a gym membership or a nutritionist. You needed purpose. You needed to feel like you mattered. We're so sorry it took us this long to understand that. Her mother was crying openly now. You're right that you look different, and yes, you've lost weight. But that's not what matters. What matters is that you look alive again. You look like yourself, maybe for the first time ever. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. Not because you're thinner, but because you found something you care about. Maya felt her own tears starting. I was so angry when you sent me here. I thought you were punishing me for being fat. I thought you were ashamed of me. We were scared, her mother said. Scared we were losing you to depression and isolation. We handled it badly. We made it about your body when it should have been about your heart and your mind. Uncle Thomas cleared his throat. Maya worked hard this summer and she did incredible things. But I want you to know something important. Every animal here, every single one, was written off by somebody. People decided they weren't worth the effort. That they were too damaged, too broken, too much work. But with the right environment, with patience and care and purpose, they transformed. He looked at Maya with those steady, kind eyes. Maya understood those animals because she felt the same way. Like she was too much of a problem to be worth the effort. But that was never true. She just needed someone to see past the surface and recognize what was really there. The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Maya's parents were both crying now, and Maya realized she was too. So here's what's going to happen, Maya said, wiping her eyes. I'm going home and I'm going back to school. But I'm different now. I know what I want, and I know I can work hard for things that matter. I'm going to run the social media for the sanctuary. I'm going to get good grades. I'm going to become a vet, and I'm going to come back here every summer and every break to help Uncle Thomas, because this work is important. Her father nodded. Whatever you need. If you need tutoring, we'll get it. If you need to take online classes to prepare for veterinary school, we'll make it happen. We support you 100%. They left the farm later that afternoon with Maya's bags packed and promises made. Uncle Thomas hugged her goodbye, which surprised her because he wasn't usually a hugger. You take care of yourself, he said quietly. And remember what we talked about. These animals will be here waiting for you.